Welcome to 52 Weeks of Contemplation. This week's word is forgiveness. And the reason that this week's word is forgiveness is because it isn't this week's word, is because it's last week's word. Life got the better of me last week, and I did not record my word for 52 Weeks of Contemplation. Now, as you might guess, that leads to self-recrimination, guilt, remorse, embarrassment, because I kept meeting people last week who said that they actually watch these and they enjoy them and they're useful to them. And then I just felt terrible that I didn't post my word for 52 Weeks of Contemplation. And then all those little voices came out, inner critic voices that said, you see, you were crazy to say you could do 52 Weeks of Contemplation because look, you can never follow through. You start projects, you don't finish projects. I have 100 old stories about that. So it made me think that what I needed to talk about today was forgiveness. Forgiveness we often think of as something we give to someone else. One of my favorite quotes from an old Oprah Winfrey show was a fellow who said, when we harbor resentment against someone else, it's like taking poison and expecting the other person to die, which I always found very helpful when I was demonizing or feeling angry with other people in my life. But I also recognize it's true of how I treat myself. So being mean to myself, beating myself up, being hard on myself, sometimes really falls into the I'm taking poison department. It doesn't inspire me to make another one of these. It makes me feel like hiding away, and that's not a useful way to go forward, is it? Especially for those of you who actually watch this. So forgiveness. Here's what I would like to offer you this week about forgiveness. A few exercises just to think about. Why don't you notice this week some place that you have trouble forgiving yourself? And I would say look small. My example that comes into my head automatically is sometimes how I leave the kitchen after breakfast. So when I come back at supper time, I'm sort of disappointed in myself that I didn't leave the kitchen in a better state. Maybe it's not putting the cap on the toothpaste. Maybe it's always being just 5 minutes late for something. But pick just one of those little irritants that you have trouble forgiving yourself for, that you just feel you should be able to do better at. And forgive yourself. I think I'll leave that as an experience for you, what that is like to sort of say, I forgive myself, and move on. I'm going to suggest to you as a starting point, it's a letting go. So notice what that's like. The other thing I would say, and maybe as soon as I'm done taping this for you, and you're watching, is think about a time when you have felt forgiven, and remember how that felt. It's good sometimes. I think felt memory is stronger than just words, so I think plugging into a time you felt forgiven and knowing what it felt like is probably pretty useful. And I guess the last thing is, wherever this week you try to forgive yourself, and should you fail at it, you get to forgive yourself for that too. Give yourself a soft place to fall. Be your own best friend. Treat yourself kindly. Trust me. You're worth it. So am I. I'll see you next week. I promise. Forgiveness.